We'll give you guys a little bit of a preview here. We have Terra Water Heatran from Snow, which is unusual. It's almost always grass, and occasionally it's fairy. Terra Water Heatran with Heavy Slam, Protect, Magma Storm, and Iron Defense. So this is an extraordinarily unusual.
Okay, we actually saw this Heatran
set.
set. They're talking about the Heatran set right now.
Oh, you can see them on your screen here.
There we go.
We've seen something very similar to this Heatran set already. I'm going to quick do some screenshotting. This is the same thing I did last time, so just bear with me, stream. I'll cut this out in post so anybody watching on YouTube won't see this. So this one is Kiwamu's. Terra Grass Champa looks interesting. Sunny Day as well is really interesting when you're running Water Urshifu, but you know, this is a pretty standard Rilla, pretty standard Flutter, Pixie Plate Flutter. A little bit interesting Heatran, but overall not like too crazy. Everybody's running Icicle Crash as well. Ice Spinner has fully fallen off the map. Funny how the meta impact of... It's really funny how the meta impact of Urshifu actually convinced enough people that to change their set on Chien-Pao, right? Like, Chien-Pao's set has been very set in stone for so long. But Urshifu's impact increased the Rocky Helmet usage to such a degree that Ice Spinner became better to specifically avoid losing your Focus Sash. Or Icicle Crash became better to specifically avoid losing your Focus Sash, and that is valued higher than the fact that it can miss. So some extremely interesting stuff. Extremely interesting stuff. I like looking at that kind of thing a lot, like meta developments caused by specific things. And that's one of the most interesting examples I think that we've had in a very long time. Okay. Once again, give me one sec. Go ahead and bring up the pen. So last time I did this, it got a little upset. So we might see like a bar come along on the bottom or whatever. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Okay. So interesting things to look out for each. I think the number one thing that I'm worried about currently is, at least on Kiwamu's team, is this Sunny Day. I don't understand why this is here currently. I'm sure it'll reveal itself, but this seems like a very strange choice. Sunny Day on this. Most of the time, Tornadus is, if you're going to be running Tornadus alongside stuff like Urshifu, you're going to be running it with Rain Dance to boost your Urshifu damage. So Sunny Day feels a little bit weird. It does synergize with the Heatran, so we'll mark that as a potential thing up here. So is Sunny Day specifically for the Heatran? It might be. You know, you also do get Photosynthesis boost on the Flutter Mane. So curious on why Sunny Day is included, but these would be the two that this would affect. As for on the other side, we do see a speed control focused Cresselia. We saw how well Cresselia did last game. Cresselia has been such an underappreciated force in the metagame currently. You know, we have both Icy Wind and Trick Room. So dual speed control on this is very interesting. So we have options for both slowing opponents down when they're not under Tailwind and also subverting it entirely with Trick Room when they are. This Heatran set is also extremely interesting. We did see this, I believe, on stream at Worlds. So very cool stuff. It could get blown up. So if you think about what beats this, right? because this beats a lot of stuff. What beats this on their team? Their Heatran wins, and their Rillaboom also wins. But other than that, the Heatran's kind of chilling, and the Heatran can forcibly remove those matchups from its matchup spread with Magma Storm. Now, Magma Storm can miss. That's its big problem. But when it hits, it locks the opponent in and does damage over time. Heavy Slam will be more than enough to one-shot Fluttermane. We see that this one is also Terra Fairy, so this Fluttermane has no way to get away from Heavy Slam. Heavy Slam always Okos. So HS always Oko. Fluttermane will always die to Heavy Slam. So that's probably what this is specifically for. We do see another Pixie Plate over here. The big difference we see is Grass Terra, so this makes it a lot better against Urshifus. Sunny Day in particular on this helps greatly with that matchup generally, and like that matchup anyway. But we do see actually also the Terra Grass over here, which I'm assuming is also specifically for Urshifu. You know, one of the big ways to punish Tianpao, because Tianpao likes sticking around using Protect to stall turns so its partners can do a lot of damage. One of the greatest ways to punish that is to find something that goes through Protect, and Urshifu does that. So if you're in a position where Tianpao's on the field and you don't want it to die from Urshifu through Protect, you can just tear it. And if you do tear it, you remove its abysmal defensive typing, then you're kind of in a position where you can start like actually attacking stuff, right? So that can be used to pretty effectively turn the table on a lot of potential checks for this mon. I like that quite a bit. Pretty standard Amoonguss. Pretty standard Chien-Pao, pretty standard Urshifu. We do see Taunt on this, so one big key differentiator between these two. Mystic Water and Splash Plate do the same thing, so I'm not really going to talk about the differences there. It's just Taunt versus close combat. You know, we saw how much Taunt was utilized in the previous game, specifically to deal with things like Amoonguss. We don't see an Amoonguss over here, so it feels almost like a dead move slot. Tornadus is always going to get its status move off before you, right? And honestly, there's not a whole lot of stuff that wants to go for status moves on this team, on Kiwamu's team. So I think Taunt really is only usable against the Heatran to prevent it from subbing and protecting. But when you're up against the Heatran, you also need to be wary of the threat of Terra Grass Terra Blast, which just immediately deletes you. So I think Taunt's kind of a dead move slot on this specific game. So I'd give probably the advantage, at least for the offensive core, over to Kiwamu. I'd say this one feels better offensively. But we're in a very interesting position where we have sort of like a dual mode team here, right? We were talking about how this one's kind of straying a little bit towards hyper offense due to the inclusion of Tornadus and standard hyper offense staples with these two, Fluttermane being really powerful, and then these two being like a little bit of a defensive core. They can switch in, they can take moves. This one has sub plus. I think Heatran on under Tailwind is actually super underrated. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start out with like Rilla Heatran and then they switch out the Rilla with the U-turn into the Tornadus, then set up Sunny Day and Tailwind and kind of lock that down, blow things up the Heatran. Really, in that case, we're looking at a lot of stuff that really can only answer it with their, like, you can really only answer that with your own Heatran at some point, right? Especially if they set up Sunny Day. Urshifu is going to have a rough time because of the Sunny Day, so yeah, I think Sunny Day is almost entirely there for Heatran and really allows this Heatran to flourish. Citrus Berry is nice. Leftovers you could also run on a set like this. We do see the item difference over here with Leftovers on this one. Leftovers, I think, makes a lot more sense on this as well because Iron Defenses allows you to boost up basically indefinitely. Although we do see that on the screen, we have ways to beat that, right? Surging Strikes always crits, goes through your defense boost. Sacred Sword also ignores your opponent's stat boosts. So we do have ways to deal with that. But Heatran, once it Terras, does resist Surging Strikes, and Sacred Sword isn't stab, so it's not actually going to be doing as much damage as you'd think. So Terra Water Heatran actually looks pretty well positioned with Iron Defense to take on these two mons. A lot of the time we're seeing close combat being like sort of the answer to a Terra Grass Heatran. It still is neutral against Heatran, but again, once you have your defense boost set up, you don't really care as much. And because only Surging Strikes crits reliably, you don't have a great way to break through this if you let it get set up. I think this is going to be a tale of two Heatrans. I expect Heatran on both sides to be a very pivotal part of this matchup. Um, I'll just put extremely important because honestly, I don't remember how to say pivotal. But yeah, I expect the Heatran on both sides to be extremely important. I do think I give the edge to Kiwamu's team, but either team could take this, and I wouldn't be particularly surprised. Overall, they're very similar. I just think the Sunny Day plus Heatran combo is actually going to be a big deal. And having Tailwind to make sure your Heatran outspeed stuff, I gotta assume this is a pretty offensively invested Heatran. I think that's going to be really good for them. Now, we could obviously see it go the other way, but yeah, I am expecting this to probably go the way of Kiwamu. I gotta erase all this stuff now. Yeah, things to look out for are both Heatrans. Look out for Sunny Day from the Tornadus to improve Heatran's matchup into his opponent. Look out for potential Trick Room from the side of Tomoyuki to deal with the speed control present on Kiwamu's team. And just expect a lot of Heatran. I think we're going to see a ton of Heatran in this matchup. I think it's one of the most pivotal Pokemon on both sides. So that's my read currently. Anyway, let's get into it.
Team on the bottom right, we've got this Terra Grass Pixie Plate Fluttermane. I'm a big fan of Pixie Plate myself personally. Another Cresselia, but this one with both Icy Wind and Trick Room. This is actually a combination that my friend Aaron Trailer was really interested in, this Icy Wind Trick Room Cresselia. I'm really interested to see how this works. We do have an Amoonguss, but for some reason it's not holding the Life Orb. It's actually holding the Citrus Berry, and once again, taunt Urshifu. And if you want to break down Kiwamu's team, Yuki, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah. So we see the Rillaboom, Heatran, Urshifu, Fluttermane, Chien-Pao, and Tornadus. I think the Rillaboom is relatively standard. I think there's a bit of debate between the Terra Fire or the Terra Poison. And yeah, I think that's a pretty standard Rillaboom that is supporting the team pretty well, especially the Heatran that has a substitute.
Also, as a quick aside, I think this is really a really good skill for anybody who wants to get into tournaments and playing VC and like open team sheets in general. Most of the time you get a very limited time when looking at open team sheets. I think it's always better to try and look for stuff that surprises you and think about what that can mean for the team, right? Like originally I was like, okay, well this seems like, relatively standard mons, I'm not seeing anything too crazy. Specifically, I'm talking about Kiwamu's team here because I think the Sunny Day is a great example of this. I was like, oh, this is a relatively standard team. What about it jumps out to me as not standard? So number one, substitute, that's fringe standard. I've seen it a couple times, and I don't think it changes the matchup inherently for Heatran, like super crazily. But it is an interesting tech. But what really struck me as important differences are the Terra Grass on Chien-Pao and the Sunny Day on Tornadus. Those are relatively large shifts on each of these teams from standard. And especially if you're running Sunny Day, which weakens your own Urshifu, there has to be a good reason for that. And then, of course, through further investigation, we were able to probably relatively effectively deduce that Sunny Day is for Heatran and Fluttermane, specifically Heatran. This Heatran might be actually invested a little bit in speed to guarantee that it outspeeds stuff in a position where you can substitute behind, you can get behind a substitute and then start blowing things up with your Heat Wave under Sunny Day.
With the fake out. And I think the Tornadus having Sunny Day, maybe it's because I don't have too much experience with Tornadus teams, but I always find it interesting when there's a Tornadus with Sunny Day, but there's also an Urshifu next to it.
Yeah.
It seems like it kind of limits your options like a little bit, since they're both really strong Pokemon that you want to bring to a lot of the matches. But it seems like it really wants to support the Fluttermane a lot, and maybe you can take the plan to drastically reduce that damage output from opposing Urshifus.
Absolutely. There's actually a lot of similarities between these teams. They both have Fluttermane with Pixie Plate and the same 4 moves. They both have the same 4 moves on Chien-Pao, though one of them is Terra Ghost, one of them is Terra Grass. I would say that probably Terra Ghost is slightly better here, though it's not a Pokemon that loves to Terrasilize. The speed control mon is going to be different, as is the Heatran. It's interesting that neither Heatran can do anything to the other Heatran. Like, they have, I guess, imagine you Terrasilize to water and then Terra Blast just annihilate you.
Oh, true. So
Yeah, this is another thing that they're touching on right now. Heatran on Tomoyuki's side almost never has a great matchup into the Heatran on Kiwamu's side, whereas the Heatran on Kiwamu's side does punish the Heatran on Tomoyuki's side for terraing in the correct situation. So that is something to look out for. Remember, I said that Heatran, I think, on both teams is going to be pretty pivotal, whether it's through a defensive switch in or just like general offensive presence. I think Kiwamu's is going to be a lot better. And I think it's going to be better not only in its matchup into the general team of Tomoyuki's, but also just better in the 1v1. So I expect it to be a tale of 2 Heatrans in this match, and I expect Kiwamu's to come out on top.
Actually something that Kiwamu goes for, right? Like, try to force the Terrasalization on the Heatran, pressuring with the Urshifu maybe, and then go for the Terra Blast to make kind of a one-sided mirror matchup.
I feel like if you're Tomoyuki, you might not want to bring the Heatran, to be honest, just because, like, oh, they have Heatran, my best option is Heavy Slam. Yeah. I guess with Citrus Berry, you might win eventually.
Ooh, we see a 30 seconds, so pretty Celia can do. Like you talked about earlier, I think that's something that like our group has talked about a lot. On at least on Kiwamu.
It's midnight for me, and I still have a lot of this to go through, so I'm gonna start skipping.
That is the first one they bring. So we get multiple vision. We are walking in now. Sorry, I think you all probably can't see that. We have multiple monitors, so we get multiple vision. We are starting the
locked in game 1. Let's look at the leads.
Yes, thank you, Team Umbra. Yeah, hashtag Umbra Diff.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see, because I honestly feel like Snow cannot bring their Heatran. Like, that's...
You're right.
So I feel like which 4 Pokemon they bring are, like, a little bit more limited. We are going to see...
Snow's bringing out the Chien-Pao and the Urshifu water, whereas Kiwamu's bringing out the Fluttermane.
Okay, so we see immediately Chien-Pao, Urshifu, Fluttermane, Tornadus. I wouldn't be surprised to see, especially because we're looking at a Pixie Plate Fluttermane, it could be speed boosting under the sun, right? And if it is speed boosting under the sun, it outspeeds everything. So you throw up the sun, make it so that you can't really die to water moves very easily, and then blow up both of the opponent's Pokemon with Dazzling Gleam because you're fast and everything, and it's boosted by Pixie Plate, so it still does really good damage. I've thought for a long time that Fluttermane's an excellent counter to these two specifically, and that's why I think that its meta relevance has stayed as high as it is. I don't think it's nearly as much as like the meta warping broken thread it was in earlier formats. It just happens to have a matchup in all of the top tiers that is very favorable. And I think Rage Powder next to Fluttermane, so Amoonguss or Volcarona, has been, the standard wisdom on how to deal with a lot of these things. But having Sunny Day as well is another way to get a similar thing done, right? You want your Fluttermane to survive their priority and then punish them for existing. And this Fluttermane is poised to do just that.
That is certainly Kiwamu leaning back in their chair here. I mean, this is 2 offensive leads, but I mean, the Fluttermane's sitting kind of pretty here.
But at the same time, I think like Tomoyuki's Urshifu is actually positioned pretty poorly now, right? Like if the Sunny Day goes up, Fluttermane gets powered up, and then the Urshifu has very little ways to hit the Fluttermane.
Yeah, with special attack booster too, that's even more interesting. I think yeah, I want to know what the boost is on this Fluttermane before I make like any more analysis. If it's not speed, it might get nuked by this.
Yeah, very near max there, and that's relevant because if it's not a
might get nuked by this.
The combination of Sunny Day and Dazzling Gleam is very different, but actually Switching out here.
Pulls the Chen out.
Most likely, I would say Amoonguss, but let's see what comes in here.
The Cresselia, so definitely able to take those dazzling gleams a lot better.
I think we saw that this was going to be Terra Steel and Tornadus.
Fairy one first.
That specifically as a... Oh, no, never mind. We did not see that.
Here. And if not, is it going to protect? Because I think Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam will certainly pick up a KO here.
Terra Fairy Pixie Plate Dazzling Gleam in the sun is probably about to go nuclear, would be my guess.
Oh, great terrestrialization here, yeah.
Like, you're tearing your Urshifu, but
the Tornadus actually does have Taunt, but will it make it through the
might
turn?
still make you explode.
This Terra Water Surging Drake, Sunny Day was not chosen, so something is going to take a big hit here.
I just said Sunny Day wasn't chosen.
So we see the Tailwind going up.
Tailwind.
Not going to affect this.
Okay, so that to me says that this is not a speed booster.
Cut out. Urshifu able to survive thanks to the terrestrialization, but still going to take a lot of damage.
Critical hit would have been pretty big there.
It's probably going to retaliate into which slot?
Fluttermane. That's
Yep.
bulky, but it's not surviving Terra Water.
161 is almost max. I believe 162 is max.
Wow, there's the end of Fluttermane. So, I mean, I would say that probably wasn't the most effective use of terrestrialization. It's certainly, the damage is nice and it could add up, but like, because you weren't one-shotting the Urshifu anyway, even with terrestrialization, it's a little bit spooky. And this Chen Pao, I feel like in the West especially, Crunch Chen Pao picked up a lot. I think maybe in Japan as well, but both these players do not have Crunch on their Chen Pao, which means Chen Pao's best move to Cresselia is Sucker Punch, which is not super likely to work in this position, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess I'm wondering like what the risk would have been for going for Sunny Day instead. Like, I'm not sure if you would have gotten too much out of outspeeding the opposing Chen Pao because it has the Focus Sash item, so it would be guaranteed to survive.
Yeah, I think that like maybe the fear was Icicle Crash picking up a KO. I don't. It depends on how. Like, with that much HP, I would hope you would survive.
Yeah.
But like, I also don't know. It is worth noting that this Cresselia is actually holding the Rocky Helmet item. And so it's not like a Citrus Berry or something. So it's possible that like I don't think Bleak Windstorm plus Icicle Crash would KO, but I also don't know that for a fact.
Though.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, you also have to hit your Bleak.
Yeah, I'm basically positive that a Bleak Windstorm and Icicle Crash would not kill. They're talking about that a little bit in the VOD.
This could be a pretty advanced returns.
I think that this Urshifu is really the big threat here. But I know that we don't have Ally Switch on this Crest. So, unlike last game, we don't have those mind games with positioning. But Kiwamu does make the good read that the Protect is coming out and attacks into this Cresselia. Cresselia flinches. Massive flinch.
Because of the Terra Water,
Obviously, we don't get to see what Tomoyuki selected, but Trick Room could have been devastating. Lunar Blessing would have been a really bad outcome as well.
Say, all right, like, you're going to take out my Urshifu, but I've broken your Focus Sash. Now my Chen Pao went the 1-versus-1, but we're seeing the power of Icicle Crash over Ice Spinner there, by the way. Like, not only do you not take Rocky Helmet...
That flinch is really massive. I don't think the Cresselia was ever in range of dying that turn. Now it's in range of dying. This becomes a much more threatening turn because of the extra HP that it lost from eating an Icicle Crash last turn. And this is sort of like what I'm talking about when I talk about like how impactful, like, or like how punishable switching is so often. Because effectively, I mean, it went for Protect, but a switch would have done effectively the same thing, right? Like, it still allows the Cresselia to get hit, and it still leaves you in a disadvantageous position. But
a huge miss, and this time there's no Icicle Crash to no flinch, and
what does it go for? Icy Wind.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
Really unfortunate.
Breaks the sash of the Chien. That's pretty huge.
Losing your Focus Sash, at least that's my opinion on it.
Yep.
And now the Focus Sash is gone anyway. Actually, we do see, by the way, the Covert Cloak preventing the speed drop from Icy Wind.
So I was wondering, like, wait, I thought I had one more animation to see before moving, but yeah, that's a great call out. So I guess the Chen Pao is the only Pokemon that had his speed lowered, and it's still in Tailwind, so it's probably inconsequential, but the important part was definitely getting rid of that Focus Sash.
Yeah, absolutely. It is worth noting that Icy Wind did 10 damage, and if my math is my math correct, Yuki, how much is it going to heal from Grassy Terrain? It'll heal 9, right?
I think it'll heal 9.
So actually, it needs 2 turns of Grassy Terrain to get back to that that Focus Sash. Though it is worth noting that even though the Chen Pao is Terra Ghost on on Snow's team.
All right. So we do see the Chien come out. It can't Terra anymore, so we're in a position where Sacred Sword into Bleak Wind will pick up the KO on that for sure. But
Cresselia like cannot predict itself. and Chen Pao is in range of a Sacred Sword plus Bleak Windstorm double up. So the question is, will Tomoyuki predict that? Will they predict the ignoring of the Chen Pao? Because I think if Sacred Sword goes off here, Yuki, I think this game is over.
I totally agree. And at the same time, I think the game could be over for Tomoyuki as well if he doesn't protect the Chen Pao and you get a free Bleak Windstorm and a Sacred Sword. So
Switches out the Tornadoes.
understand the risks, and now it's about how do they.
It's just the Rilla.
I like how quickly Kiwamu locked in, by the
I
way.
do like Rilla here.
No
I do like Rilla
hesitation.
quite a bit here.
Like, I'm going for this play.
This is a read. If he gets the read, or if I guess I don't know their nouns, but if Kiwamu gets the read, then it's super good for them.
Prediction there. Taking out the Rillaboom in one hit.
Ooh, critical.
I don't think the critical hit mattered. Maybe it might have mattered.
Kiwamu looked surprised. I think the critical hit probably matters.
Icy wind. So yeah.
No flinch, icy wind once again. There is no way for this Chen Pao to get into a position where it gets his focus sash back.
Yeah, really.
And
Especially without knowing the slot, like it feels really risky to make a play like that. But
we're also in a position where we're back to a speed tie because the speed of the Chen Pao on Kiwamu's side is halved, but it gets doubled by Tailwind. So we're back at a position where the speed is even.
like Icicle Crash
And after this Tailwind goes away, the speed is no longer even at all.
and then maybe Tailwind Sacred Sword can give you the
This is not looking good for Kiwamu, I don't think. Do we know what Tomoyuki's last is? I don't believe we know what Tomoyuki's last is. But Tomoyuki is 3. Kiwamu's about to be in a bad position once his Tailwind ends, and I think it ends this turn. This is very dangerous turn.
Which is that Tornadus can't protect itself, so that I almost wonder if do you read the protect or do you
So now we're in a similar situation on Tomoyuki's end as we were earlier on Kiwamu's end, right? Kiwamu made a read for a protect. The opportunity to make a really good read on a protect, and oh my god, that speed drop's so huge. Remember when I was talking about how we were back in a case where it was a speed tie regardless of the Tailwind? We're not anymore. We're not anymore. So Kiwamu's Chen Pao under Tailwind is back at an advantage, which is actually massive.
Focus Sash is on the table.
Coming back.
Yeah.
Coming back if this Chen Pao can survive this turn. I mean, I guess you would.
Tailwind and Sacred Sword feels safe, right?
Yes.
But the thing is that it also means.
I mean, we're back at another mind game, right? You know, they can always protect. Tailwind Sacred Sword is super powerful, but it's not.
No way. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way you ignore Chen Pao again, right? Okay, there's no way. There's no way.
We're also seeing Tomoyuki does not have Moonblast on their Cresselia. They're running Psychic instead. And we see how that can be super detrimental in this specific format, right? This Cresselia, Kiwamu knows that this Cresselia cannot do enough damage, or cannot do any damage to their Chen Pao. Well, I guess they can do Icy Wind damage, but that's not it's not stuff.
Lower speed and then double it because of rounding errors or rounding.
Sure, that's right.
It's possible to not exactly be the same. But anyway, yeah, it doesn't matter here. The speed drop, Bleak Windstorm speed drop plus Icicle Crash miss allows Kiwamu to outspeed Tomoyuki's. Wait, hang on, we're back in this. Wait.
Yes, we are absolutely back.
Wait, a Sucker Punch not going for the protect here to get back up to
regain his focus.
Yeah, thank you so much.
They can't regain Focus Sash this turn anyway, I don't think, because they did get hit by an Icy Wind.
It's Tornadus, then Fluttermane, then Chen Pao, I think, because it's -3 speed.
Yeah, so they are predicting the speeds correctly here. The Tailwind is on Kiwamu's side, and the Cover Cloak has prevented speed drop. So it is going to be Team Order, Tornadus, then Fluttermane, then Chen Pao, then Cresselia. So Sucker Punch is always the correct play. Sucker Punch into Bleak Wind, hitting on the Fluttermane wins the game every time. Yeah, that's always the out.
Wow, what?
Because by clicking Sucker Punch, you guarantee that you're faster than the Fluttermane, and you know it's hard to count on Bleak Wind. But if Bleak Wind connects, Cresselia will never attack anyway. Sucker Punch is always the correct play.
Seeing the psychology there, where Chen Pao has an 100% accurate ice move, and actually for Kiwamu there. Hitting that, if that was Ice Spinner instead of Icicle Crash, in this match specifically, it would have been better because you would have taken out the Tornadus. I guess maybe you might not have KO'd the Urshifu to be fair, the Rillaboom switch in, but you also got the crit there, so if you were going to crit anyway, then maybe it, you know what I mean? Like, it's hard to say, but missing Icicle Crash there is really the difference maker, in my opinion. Taking out the Tornadus, game's immediately over.
Absolutely, and I think the position...
Yeah, we can also see that this is already a much more explosive match than the previous match we had. The previous match was a much slower, more measured match. This one is all about damage. I'm actually kind of interested. Kiwamu does pick up the Heatran, but doesn't bring the Tornadus. And we saw that Cresselia does have dual forms of speed control, so we might be in a position where Icy Wind actually makes a really big impact this game. It almost made a really big impact last game, but we had, you know, a bunch of dynamic speed with Bleak Wind Storm dropping speed, and then we had priority as well. But no speed control on Kiwamu's end after dealing with the speed control and almost potentially losing to the speed control coming out from that Cresselia feels a little weird to me. But it looks like they're probably just trying to make a situation for themselves where they don't need to rely on speed at all, and they can use the bulk of Heatran, combined with Substitute and the grassy terrain coming out from this Rillaboom, to sort of just take over the game. We didn't see Heatran from Tomoyuki last time. You know, a lot of the commentators are talking about how they don't expect to see Heatran at all. I think Heatran is still fine from Tomoyuki, but it is definitely, it's not positioned super well into Kiwamu's team. It serves mainly as a great switch-in to a lot of moves, but if you're just running a switch-in, then it almost feels like a wasted slot to me, if that's all it does is it tanks an attack.
This is a trap. Like, this to me feels like
I don't know.
Kiwamu has laid an extremely dangerous trap, and they're saying, okay, Tomoyuki, you have to read that I'm going to bring Heatran, and if you don't read that Heatran's coming, things are going to be very difficult. For anyone curious, by the way, the reasoning for Heavy Slam Heatran instead of Flash Cannon specifically is for Fluttermane. Fluttermane is much more bulky on the special slide. Magma Storm is a great move to use against most things, and oh my goodness,
Double Heatran. Okay.
You call it. That's what I want to ask.
I'm honestly in disbelief here.
All right, so this is actually a really interesting position for Kiwamu to be in. Or really interesting. You remember I was talking about questions and answers, right? Question and answers. So we have... whoops. Let's turn that off. So we have a really interesting proposition being placed by Tomoyuki this turn. Let's pull up the Photoshop document so that I can write about it a little bit. So we do see on both sides a Heatran. So I'm just going to put them on the same side for, you know, purposes of looking at stuff. So we'd see a Heatran, an Amoonguss, and an Urshifu. So this Heatran with Flash Fire disincentivizes this Heatran from going for its only fire move, which is Heat Wave. Because if it goes for Heat Wave, which may not even kill this Amoonguss because the Amoonguss can Terra Water, right? If it goes for this Heat Wave, it boosts Magma Storm damage from this Heatran as long as it's on the field. We also see that Urshifu is here. Urshifu does not want to attack into this Amoonguss, or does not want to get redirected. If it gets redirected into this Amoonguss, it's not going to do any damage to Heatran, right? Heatran can start looking for like Iron Defenses, could potentially go for its Terra itself, could Magma Storm this Ursh to lock it in. A very interesting position from this Heatran, and most importantly for this Heatran versus Heatran matchup that we're currently seeing, as long as this doesn't Terra, is that the only move that really does, the only fire stab move that this one has is Heat Wave and its dual target, so it's guaranteed going to proc this. Whereas Magma Storm is single target, meaning that it can guaranteed get the Heat Wave boost from this if it decides to go for a fire move, and then use its single target move to not return the Flash Fire Heat Wave or the Flash Fire boost. So it's a really interesting proposition that they're leaving open here. And for example, if this one was to go for Terra Water, if Amoonguss goes for Terra Water, you're actually in a position where you kind of wall them a little bit. They can go for Terra Grass and then Terra Blast into this, but that's not, you know, something you just want to do off rip, I don't think. It might actually even be worth not tearing and going for Terra Blast as a normal move, just because it covers all your bases. But it's a very interesting proposition and a cool way to use Heatran to sort of like deny this other Heatran's ability to play the game. You know, I talked a lot about how I thought this Heatran, the one with Heat Wave Substitute, Terra Blast, Terra Grass, all that kind of stuff, was a lot better. But we're seeing some of the flaws of running a dual target move. And we also didn't see the Tornadus brought. The Tornadus would also kind of change this matchup a little bit because you're in a situation where you can just taunt this Amoonguss. You know, it's not Mental Herb, it's Citrus Berry. So you can remove the Amoonguss's functionality by just bringing that in. So lots of interesting questions being proposed. Funnily enough, it turns out that this Urshifu is the most threatened thing on the field, which is not what you'd expect from a very passive Heatran and Amoonguss. Not that Heatran is always passive, but this specific one is. Seeing that being the thing putting on pressure is very very novel. I'd say it's pretty interesting. Hold on, I'm going to increase the brush size so that I can erase this faster.
Like,
It's a free substitute.
it's a free substitute.
How
yeah.
do you break that? You can't.
There's-
And you don't even have to Terra.
Well, you might want to, based on what I'm seeing on the screen in front of me here.
Oh, sorry, I was talking from Kiwamu's perspective.
Oh,
like,
yes,
he can
yes.
Just, yeah, he has the
So-
he's the one who has the Terra Blast Heat Wave.
It is also very interesting, right?
Oh,
Like
am
you
I
can sub
sure
and then your
you
Heatran
might-
can't get touched by either of their Pokemon.
Oh,
But
Tomoyuki.
what I'm worried
So
about
sorry.
is
Okay,
that
never mind. Kiwamu who's called
They're-
I got
yeah,
it.
there's
I'm
going to be
so
in a
sorry.
situation
Okay,
where
so the bottom player,
the
Kiwamu
Heatran
has-
can't
you
do
know,
a
I
whole
thought
lot
you
of
were
damage to
switching
anything
around.
this
No,
turn.
sorry. Wait, is this? Yes.
No
okay.
Terra.
I got the wrong team sheets in front of me.
Just sacking the Heatran?
Oh my goodness.
Sorry for yelling. Oh my god,
but
wait,
it
it lives
survives.
surging strikes?
It lived?
Huh? I didn't know that was possible.
And it's Mystic Water or Splash Plate as
Yeah.
well.
Oh, substitute coming out here. What is the Heatran
No
gonna do here?
It
shot.
must be Magma Storm into
Oh
the Urshifu,
my
which
goodness, it
connects.
connects. And is there gonna be a spore follow-up? Nappy.
Because this is kind of what I was worried about, right?
Still not looking that
Yeah,
good
Spore.
for Tomoyuki. I mean, how does he hit this Heatran?
How does he? Well, how do you think Terra Blast gets rid of Heatran? Like,
Substitute?
no.
Oh.
Wait, hang on. The top player is Magma Storm, Iron Defense, Heavy Slam. The bottom player is like, so the top player only has like a little bit of percent left.
Yes.
Tomoyuki only has a little health left on Heatran, but is that
Yes.
enough for like the only damaging move is
Oh
Terra
my
Blast?
god.
So
Yeah,
no
and this is what I'm talking about, right? Like, the only way that both Heatrans are at a standstill right now.
Like,
They
I
can't
think
hurt
they
each
will,
other, and
but
he's
I
just
don't know.
fully immobilized this Urshifu through Spore and locked it in with
But a
Magma Storm.
special- And does Amoonguss read this and go for? The Amoonguss has Pollen Puff. So if this is a Heat Wave, you could actually get all your health back on the Heatran. So Kiwamu has to make this call correct.
Yes.
Like I said, it seems so wild that this defensive of the set could actually, you know, force um,
So I think Tomoyuki doesn't really want to switch off
like
either,
this
so-
defensive of a lead of a combination could be exerting this much pressure, but we saw them do exactly what I was worried about. Ignore the Heatran and deal with this Urshifu.
Will Terra
Let's
Blast
blast,
pick
pick
up
it
the
up.
KO? Terra Blast normally only used after terrestrializing, but will it do enough? Yeah.
Does pick up the KO. Okay, so Kiwamu does come out on top specifically because of that. If they don't pick up the KO with the Terra Blast, this is like a standstill. So very interesting question proposed from Tomoyuki. About as good of an answer as you could possibly get coming out of Kiwamu. The fact that Heatran lived without tearing is just absurd to me. You got to be really bulky to live that.
Yeah, so I guess from Tomoyuki's end, it's really tough to bring in anything here because you're still have to deal with the substitute, and you risk the heat wave connecting on both Pokemon. I guess the saving grace is that the Urshifu is asleep and can still continue to sleep. So maybe this could be an opportunity to. But if the terrestrialization happens on Kiwamu's end, you're guaranteed for the Amoonguss to basically not be able
But,
to do anything.
you know,
else next
remember,
turn.
I said this is going to be a tale of two Heatrans, and we did just see Kiwamu's Heatran win. I'm not sure there's actually a way for Tomoyuki to get back into this, right? Because the only like the main way that you get back into this is to try and like surging strikes into this.
This basically says you are not protecting in front of me, right? That's how I
Yes.
interpret this.
It's surging strikes into the Heatran would normally be such a good play, but you can just Terra.
Protecting and then positioning the Amoonguss out. But what do you even position into here?
It is worth noting that both players still have terrestrialization as well here.
And then the
Like,
Amoonguss
so
can't do
helps
anything to
switch.
you because you're Terra Grass. I think Terra Grass on
But
the
yeah,
Heatran
just
here
one
looks
thing we have to
insane
see,
from
one of the
Kiwamu.
advantages of Citrus Berry Heatran, which is that you are able to kind of take a Surging Strikes here safely.
Yep.
You're not forced to Terra defensively, so you can make a This is a prediction. They're saying, okay, I think Urshifu is going to detect, and they get it correct.
Yeah,
They say, okay,
very well
I'm
done.
not going to let you Terra here. Heat Wave or sleeping. Nappy.
Yes, this is Nappy.
Nappy time.
And yeah, we see the Heat Wave come out.
And, you know, as soon as the Heatran's removed, the heat Wave becomes an actual option that Kiwamu can rely on again. So, yeah, that Heatran actually, the Heatran from Tomoyuki was actually way more pivotal than I think anybody is giving it credit for.
That is a crit, yeah. Citrus Berry coming in here, which is nice, but I mean, Amoonguss is
Maybe it's palm puffing into the Heatran.
predicting the Terra Grass. Yeah, wow.
Yep, predicts
Another
Terra
great
Grass.
play from Kiwamu, celebrating a little bit there.
Well done. Yeah,
Really
'cause
nice.
it was so obvious for him to Terra Blast and terrestrialize that turn, right? So I think Tomoyuki respected that, tried to go for his one out, and yeah, you can just see why Kiwamu's so well versed in the best of three, right? Just like understanding the reads after seeing how Tomoyuki played game one.
I think it's really interesting you called that out because, yeah, the Heatran adjustment here was a big one, right? Like calling that they
Absolutely.
needed to bring Heatran in order to stop the Iron Defense Heatran from taking off here. And so far, managing it. I think the question here is the Terra Blast is now so safe, the
Yes.
terrestrialization Terra Blast, but Kiwamu actually hasn't gone for it. So will Tomoyuki call the bluff here, right? Like, will they Surging Strikes into that slot with a 3-turn sleep, maybe find a way back into this?
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, like, what would be the downside of doing that? Because
They surge into the Urshifu.
not knocked out, I guess, because the Citrus Berry.
I guess predicting the protect, maybe.
so we see the
Nah, the
Citrus
protect
Berry.
doesn't matter.
We may predicting a
Predicting, what were they predicting? I'm not sure if this is ever
So we're
better.
gonna see a Heat Wave come out again.
See if the Urshifu wakes up here.
So I guess a
Urshifu's still asleep.
3-turn
Urshifu
sleep
taking
is
big
fortunate,
big
but
ol'
I mean,
nappy.
Honestly, as long as Heatran connects Heat Wave, which
Yep.
it does.
Heatran Heat Waves,
of course,
double
waking up
connects.
is nice.
Amoonguss is
We got
gone.
4 against 2, and Urshifu's
Decent
here.
damage into this Urshifu,
Well,
potential to
maybe
burn.
By the way, that would be
that would
pretty
be
massive.
game ending.
Yeah, okay, no burn.
No
What do you
burn.
think the last Pokemon is here? My guess is Chen Pao, but
I guess we're gonna see Chen Pao.
yeah.
I think
God,
Tomoyuki
I mean, this
really
is still
wanted
so
to
rough, right?
Terra
I guess the only reason that
Water
you'd attack into that Urshifu is to try and set up a situation where you guaranteed kill it next turn with your partner. So,
Yeah, I think
What
it's
did
a tough
Tomoyuki
position
bring?
No matter what, because the Chimpa will definitely move before the Heatran, so the Heatran can very safely terrestrialize and take Surging Strikes.
We're seeing one of the downsides of not running close combat, by the way, because if you have close combat, then maybe
let's see, which one of these is running?
combat into the Heatran and just like take it out. But I mean, we were assuming.
Okay, so Tomoyuki does actually not have close combat.
Worth noting here is
Remember, that was one of the things that we touched on right at the beginning of the
Heat Wave is not 100%
match, and how I thought Taunt would be kind of a dead slot on Tomoyuki's Urshifu this game, or this round. And it's definitely coming to fruition, right? Like, Urshifu can only attack with water moves, and anytime it decides to go after the Heatran, it's going to do about 2 damage.
Right, and then maybe it gets a little spookier.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he decides to go.
And Heatran is also, through the virtue of just, like, threatening the Terra, the Terra defensively, has forced Urshifu to go after its partner a lot. And now it's in a position where it's not even threatened really by anything on the field. And it can maybe afford to not Terra right now anyway. Be in a position where it can't be hurt very effectively by the Chien-Pao either. Because the big weakness of Grass Terra, right, when you're running against Chien-Pao Urshifu teams, is that Chien-Pao can then hit you for super effective damage.
The Heatran, yeah, based on his reaction, it makes me think that he would reading that.
Aquajet maybe Aquajet. Wait, this Heatran sub took a Pollen Puff. Imagine Aquajet plus Icicle Crash into the Heatran here. I don't think they went for it.
And they're sort of ruined too.
Yeah, like-
but yeah, based on his reaction,
Probably
yeah,
not,
you're
but man,
probably
that would
not.
have been incredible. Heatran's
Yeah, Icicle Crash should never take out the sub on the, or Aquajet should never take out the sub on this.
The Focus Sash here.
Sash.
We do get Aquajet to break the sash on the opposing
Okay.
Chien-Pao, and it's Sacred Sword to remove the Urshifu. Kind of banking on a big ol' sleep. Big ol' sleepy poo.
For no terrestrialization. I mean, I think it makes sense, right? Going for Aquajet, water Aquajet plus Icicle Crash. You don't know that Kiwamu was going to Aquajet there as well. Like, if it's just a, oh my god, it needs multiple hits to break.
Wait, what?
That's
Oh
gotta
yeah,
be-
this is- yeah.
Yeah,
But
Terra
you
Grass,
consider it
multiple
Terra
hits to
and
break.
the
It's
base
25% of their
as well.
HP.
It actually shocked me.
This
Almost
actually
taken a
does
Pollen Puff,
mean
avoided about
that,
3.
because I'm assuming it probably did about 20% per.
Wow.
So your sub ended up saving you about 15% damage on the Surging Strikes that turn.
Dominates the second game, right?
Terra Blast is going to fully remove this,
Tell that I can go for those like different game plans
Urshifu, and then we're in a situation where it's just over, I believe.
with the Pokemon difference.
So really great play from Kiwamu. We did really see everything that I was talking about earlier come to pass.
Honest, I think that
And I'm glad that we got to experience what the Heatran v Heatran matchup would be like. Because I really think that's like probably the most pivotal thing. If you were to play the set over, if you were to play these two teams against each other over and over and over and over and over again, I think that specifically the interaction between the Heatrans would come to be a lot more important than I think anybody's really giving credit.
Does not win there, but yeah, I mean, I think honestly, when your opponent plays as well as Kiwamu does, there's just not that much you can do. Yeah, like I mean, it was a very well.
We also didn't really see Sunny Day ever come into effect, but it still gives you so many options. I really like Sunny Day on this team after further analysis. Being able to boost your Heatran's Heat Wave and potentially pick it up with Tailwind to outspeed a lot of stuff depending on the speed investment, giving your Fluttermane the boost offensively and also making it not weak to Surging Strikes. Pretty cool stuff. I was not sold on it because they're running it next to Urshifu, but on this team it seems pretty good. Yo, Sebastian, welcome.
Turn one, and instead of like kind of going for the obvious move and just going for the obvious play that seemed pretty safe, he just didn't do that, and that just led to like really incremental advantage that just worked out to such a dominant end game.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it would have been interesting if game one had gone the other way, like if Icicle Crash hadn't missed as well, like how game three would have played out. Like that's something I personally would have really liked. Would really like to see, but it was an incredible set, and we're very lucky in that we can actually talk to our players, and hear their thoughts on the set. So if you both would like to come on in, that'd be great.
お二人ともこちら座ってください。
I think also, looking back on how many times we've seen specifically
very, very impressed. My first question is
mono water attacks plus taunt on Urshifu. This both in Worlds and here today. That Heatran makes a lot more sense. Terra Water, trap it in with Magma Storm, and then take no damage from it because we saw that it was EV'd so defensively that it lived a Surging Strikes without terraing the Heatran. So lots of defensive investment, right? So you can sit on that all day, trap it in, and then sort of bring in other mons that don't really care about it. We saw it led with Amoonguss, and granted it didn't end up working out because the other Heatran's Terra Blast, normal Terra Blast, ended up being enough damage to fully remove the Magma Storming Heatran, but it was in sort of a standstill. If that Heatran doesn't go down, it's much weirder for the rest of the game.
Return on when you hit, and the flinch chance is really great, and just the pressure that you apply to your opponent that they have to even think about the flinch chance is really big.
That makes sense. My next question is for both of them. Heatran was so important. Like it didn't come in game one, and then in game two they both brought it. Like, I would love to hear their thought process as to why each of them brought it.
これはお二人の質問なんですけど、お互い1ゲーム目に
This I'm actually really interested in.
なんですけど、2ゲーム目お互い選出して初手に出していただいたと思うんですけど、お互いのなんか選出2ゲーム目に自分のヒードランを出す理由を聞きたいです。極め選手最初。
まあそもそも通りは悪くないと思ってて、1ゲーム目に出すかも迷ったんですけど、やっぱモロバレルに対して当てたいから、1ゲーム目でモロバレルに負けたら出そうかなとも思ってたんですけど、2ゲーム目明らかにモロバレル相手出したいような試合展開だと、その羽ばたく神がこっちから展開したので、それに合わせてくるかなっていうところで、結局ヒーダラを2試合目にその相手に合わせる、対応を合わせる形でこっちも上から合わせる。
So from Kiwamu's perspective, he was even tempted to bring it in game one because it seems really favorable to the opposing team, but he wanted to see how...
since they're talking about the Heatran being favorable in the opposing team, I'll pull this up for everybody. I've been saving the team sheets. So specifically Kiwamu is talking about their Heatran being favorable into this team,
based on how Tomoyuki played,
which I think I agree with.
And yeah, I think it really paid off well for him.
Awesome.
Tomoyuki-sensei.
I think really from Tomoyuki's perspective, or from Kiwamu's perspective, the only thing that's really threatening it is Urshifu, and after Terra, the only thing that's really threatening is Jianpao.
2試合目はやはりその1試合目の展開を踏まえて相手のヒードラのこちらとしては相手のヒードラの横お互いヒードラを選したときに相手のヒードラの横にこちらのヒードラを通していこうという考えでヒードラモロバルの並びでゲームを作っていこうと考えました。
Yeah, so I think Tomoyuki acknowledged that both Heatrans didn't really have a way to touch each other. So I think he anticipates that, or that was the reason why both players didn't really bring in game one. But in game two, his game plan was to bring it next to Amoongus, so that even if Kiwamu brought in his own Heatran, he could kind of attack or focus down the other slot, the other not Heatran Pokemon.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cool.
ありがとうございました。
Awesome. Good luck in the rest of your games.
ありがとうございます。
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really like Kiwamu's team. I think it's a deviation from the norm in a really like interesting way that addresses some of the stuff that generally beats you. You know, bringing in Heatran, it feels really good. I just like Heatran as a Pokemon, and that set seems to solve a lot of issues that the traditional Tornadus, Urshifu, Hyper Offense teams struggle with.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's really